I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, Pennsylvania in the spotlight in the race for control of Congress. Democrat John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz face off in their only debate, fighting for the state's open Senate seat. How Fetterman addressed concerns about his recent stroke as the candidates clashed over abortion and crime. Officials are warning of a potential triple-demic, the flu, COVID, and RSV. Children's hospitals across the country are already filling up. What parents need to know. And fears are escalating of a Russian nuclear attack. A new warning about what Russian troops may be doing inside Ukraine's largest nuclear power plant as President Biden sends a stark warning to Vladimir Putin. But we begin with the big debate in that key Senate race in Pennsylvania. Democrat John Fetterman, who's still recovering from a recent stroke, faced off with Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz in the one and only debate scheduled in this key Senate race. Now both sides are claiming victory. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest.
From the start of the debate, Democrat John Fetterman addressing what he called the elephant in the room.
I had a stroke. He's never let me forget that. And I might miss some words during this debate, mush two words together, but it knocked me down, but I'm going to keep coming back up.
Behind the moderators, two big monitors. Questions and answers were closed captioned, so Fetterman could read them to help with lingering auditory processing issues that doctors say are normal in recovery. Nearly 6 months after his stroke, Fetterman would not promise to release his medical records.
To me, for transparency is about showing up. My doctor believes that I'm fit to serve, and that's what I believe is appropriate.
In their first and only debate, Fetterman asked if he supports President Biden's student loan forgiveness program.
It's about supporting and helping, young earners, young students to give them a break.
His campaign acknowledges ongoing auditory processing challenges are real. But on a major issue of the night, abortion, Fetterman drawing a clear contrast.
I want women, doctors, local political leaders, letting the democracy that's always allowed our nation to thrive, to put the best ideas forward so states can decide for themselves.
If you believe that the choice for abortion belongs between you and your doctor, that's what I fight for.
While Dr. Oz zeroed in on rising crime.
We have taken away the ability of police to do their job, and that's on John Fetterman.
He has never made any attempt to try to address crime during his entire career, except showing up for photo ops here in Philadelphia.
Diane, in a sign of just how important this race is, Republicans are pouring more than $6 million in the final stretch to support Dr. Mehmet Oz. The political group behind it is linked to Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and one senior Republican putting it this way, saying if we win Pennsylvania, we win the majority. They are calling this a must-win race. Diane?
All right, Rachel Scott, thank you. And be sure to check out the groundbreaking political series Power Trip, hosted by George Stephanopoulos. It brings viewers inside the top stories of the election campaign every week from an unparalleled perspective. We have back-to-back episodes airing right here on ABC News Live this Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern, Sunday at 5 p.m. Eastern, and streaming on Hulu anytime. Meanwhile, President Biden is defending the federal student loan forgiveness program as it's on hold now, pending a legal challenge. The federal appeals court temporarily blocked the president's plan to cancel billions of dollars of debt, preventing the administration from moving forward with any loan forgiveness, which could start as early as this week. Let's bring in ABC's White House correspondent Karen Travers for more on this. Karen, I know you've been speaking with listeners at radio stations across the country about this. What do people seem most concerned about right now surrounding the student loan forgiveness plan?
Yeah, Diane, the big question is, when is this going to get resolved? When will people start seeing some relief? And at this point, that is very unclear. In fact, it's the several $100 billion question right now, because this is going to have to play out through federal court. And the other big question that I was getting this week on radio stations, Diane, was what should people be doing right now? Because the White House says keep applying. The process is still open. This temporary order from a federal appeals court last week does not end the program, but it does mean that the administration cannot start sending out loan forgiveness. So they're telling people, keep applying, we can still process applications, and they're encouraging people to keep trying to get into the system right now.
Now, if the plan is ultimately blocked by the courts, how big of a blow will this be to the president?
Yeah, this is really significant, Diane, because this is a very key policy that the president right now is trying to campaign on ahead of the midterm elections, and it was a key campaign promise from the president back in 2020. A lot of questions at the White House this week about whether or not this could get resolved in a timely manner so that the president could actually start pointing to some loan forgiveness before people start voting on Election Day, just 2 weeks out now. The White House can't say that, of course, because it is a legal process. But you can imagine there's frustration here at the White House. They want to be able to say right now, this week, as the president is out there, that the money is going to some of these eligible Americans. The president had talked about this as a candidate. It took a while to get it into place. And now, with just 2 weeks until the midterms, they're essentially frozen right now. None of that relief that could have started going out this week is able to go because of this legal process.
So how long will this take to get resolved, and what happens in the meantime?
Yeah, that's the question, and it's not clear. There are several legal challenges right now that are pending. You had this one case last week where 6 Republican-led states are challenging the administration, saying the president does not have the authority, that he overstepped his authority and can't do this. The White House has said that they believe that they're on firm legal standing. They have appealed that temporary stay. The big date, though, Diane, that is circled on millions of Americans' calendars right now is January 1st. That's when the pause on federal student loan repayments is set to expire. Remember, President Trump had put in place that pause during the pandemic. If you had federal student loans, you didn't have to repay them during COVID. President Biden extended it, but that extension ends on January 1st. So for a lot of people right now, there's a lot of uncertainty. Do you have to start repaying $10,000? Do you have several $1,000s? You don't really know because you don't know what your balance is going to be because your loan forgiveness right now is held in limbo because of this process.
All right, Karen Travers, thank you for that. President Biden is issuing a stark warning to Vladimir Putin, saying using a nuclear weapon in Ukraine would be an incredibly serious mistake. This as accusations over the possible use of a dirty bomb are now raising new fears in the region. ABC News' Britt Clennett is in the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, with more.
Europe's largest nuclear power plant in Zaporizhia, accusing Russian troops of carrying out secret construction work near a nuclear fuel storage facility in the occupied plant. Adding in a statement, actions of the invaders may indicate that they are preparing a terrorist act using nuclear materials and radioactive waste, escalating fears again of a nuclear attack by Russia. This comes as the Kremlin touts an unsubstantiated claim that Ukraine is planning to use a radioactive dirty bomb in Enerhodar, close to the plant. A charge rejected by the US, Britain and France, and a concerning claim as Russia has used so-called false flags in the past to escalate the conflict, claiming that Ukraine will act on something only to do it themselves. President Biden sending Vladimir Putin a stark warning about any such use of nuclear force.
Russia would be making an incredibly serious mistake if we're to use a tactical nuclear weapon. I'm not guaranteeing you that it's a false flag operation yet. We don't know. But it would be a serious, serious mistake.
US officials are saying there are no signs currently that Moscow is imminently intending to use nuclear weapons. Russian President Vladimir Putin observing the start of Russia's annual nuclear drills. These typically involve tests of nuclear-capable missiles, something the US will be keeping a keen eye on.
And progressive Democrats have now withdrawn a letter to the White House that called for a negotiated end to the war. The memo caused backlash from within the party, all ahead of next month's midterms. Diane?
Britt Clennett in Kyiv, thank you. Stay safe, Britt. Meanwhile, Russia's ambassador to the United States says Russia does not plan to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Former U.S. Ambassador to Ukraine William Taylor joins me now to break this all down. Ambassador, thanks for being here. What do you make of these new concerns over the potential use of a dirty bomb?
And we have to be concerned. The Russians often telegraph what they are going to do by blaming the Ukrainians for doing it first. And the Ukrainians have suggested a reasonable approach. That is, have the international observers who have been on site at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant go take a look and see what's happening, see what the Russians are doing at that power plant. It is true that there are nuclear waste stockpiles there that are being stored at that plant. So it is possible that could be happening, and the observers would identify that.
Now, Russia's ambassador to the United States says they don't plan to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. How much credence do you give that statement, and what happens if they do?
Very little credence. These are the same people, the ambassador and others, are the same people who said, we're not going to invade Ukraine. This is back in February. We're not going to invade Ukraine. This is the Western hysteria that the media was hyping up. So you have very little credence to that. The question on the use of nuclear weapons is a serious one. They've said that they have these weapons. They're prepared to use them in defense of their territory, which they now claim as part of their territory that they took from Ukraine. So you have to take it seriously. However, they've not made any steps. They've not taken any actual practical steps toward that use. We'll watch that. We're watching that very closely. So far, there is no indication that they're preparing to use nuclear weapons.
Now, U.S. and Russian diplomatic relations are at their lowest point in many years. You have plenty of experience with high-level diplomatic conversations behind closed doors. So do you see a diplomatic solution to this war?
So, Dan, what we do here at the Institute of Peace is we look at options. We look at options for peace, and we always have to take a look at all the range of options. Right now, the diplomatic option is far off. Right now, the Ukrainians are winning on the battlefield. They are pushing the Russians out of their country. And that may set the stage then for some diplomatic solution when the Ukrainians figure out that it's time. The Russians would love to stop it right now because the Russians are losing on the battlefield. They're losing territory that they claimed that they attacked and they tried to annex earlier. So the Russians would love to say, have a ceasefire right now so they could keep that. The Ukrainians are pushing them out. The option for a negotiation will come later on when the Ukrainians decide that the time is right.
Now, what options are available to Russia and Ukraine, but let's start with Russia at this point, to end this war?
There's an easy option to end this war by the Russians. They can pull out of Ukraine. They have no business in their neighbor's country. They have no business invading Ukraine. They have no business trying to annex parts of a sovereign nation that's on their border. So it's very easy for the Russians. They can just pull out. They have no reason to be there. There's no justification. They can just pull out. So that's very straightforward on the Russian side.
But Ambassador, knowing what you know about Vladimir Putin, do you see that happening?
He's not crazy, Diane. He's not suicidal. He is probably rational. Rational people can make mistakes. He clearly made a mistake on this invasion. He clearly thought that this would be a much easier operation, a small operation, a special military operation. Turns out it was very difficult. He's in a big bind. He needs to find a way out. He's trying to change the subject by these mobilizations and these threats of nuclear use. His problem is he's losing on the battlefield. So he's going to have to find a way out.
All right, Ambassador Taylor, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you. Thank you,
Diane.
Coming up, officials are warning of a potential triple-demic, the flu, COVID, and RSV rather. What it means for filling pediatric hospitals and what parents need to know when we come back. Welcome back. Concerns are growing over a possible triple threat looming over hospitals across the country. Pediatric hospital beds are already at an average of 75% capacity nationwide. Now that number is expected to grow as officials warn of a potential triple-demic, the flu, COVID, and RSV. ABC's Eva Pilgrim has the latest.
Children's hospitals filling up across the country as cases of respiratory viruses spike, some now running out of space.
Almost every hour of a 24-hour period, we're completely full and we cannot accept any other patient.
Nationally, hospital beds for children are around 75% capacity, but that number even higher in some parts of the country. In these 9 states and Washington, D.C., it's more than 80%. In Texas, Tennessee, Delaware, Maine, and Rhode Island, pediatric hospital beds are at more than 90% capacity. At those hospitals with beds, many seeing hours-long waits.
We sort of haven't had a break. We've gone from COVID to RSV to influenza, and who knows what's next.
In Green Bay, Wisconsin, 5-month-old Bentley Phillips is hospitalized with RSV.
It was all in the matter of a 24-hour period that we had noticed one thing after another.
His mother saying she is grateful for the care her baby boy is able to receive, but warning how quickly everything changed.
It started with the wheezing. He progressed so fast. His oxygen was so low that we don't know what would have happened if we were home any longer than we were.
The flood of patients now forcing some hospitals to pause elective surgeries, others even having to turn kids away. Pharmacies feeling the strain too. Walgreens saying its pharmacy now filling weekly prescriptions of antivirals at a rate 10 times higher than this time last year. That number doubling over the last 2 weeks. Now, officials warning that we could see a triple-demic, RSV, COVID, and the flu, further straining hospitals as we hit the winter peak.
We're seeing the rise of 3 respiratory viruses, all of them going up around the same time. That's concerning. The good news is for 2 of the 3, we have vaccines that are highly effective at preventing serious illness, COVID and flu.
And doctors say if your child has any signs of trouble breathing, you need to bring them to the hospital right away. These hospitals are very busy. Diane.
All right, Eva Pilgrim, thank you. And a family is breaking their silence after their 17-year-old son was shot by a San Antonio police officer in a McDonald's parking lot earlier this month. As he clings to life, the teen's parents are now sharing their story exclusively with ABC News and demanding answers and action. John Quinones is in San Antonio with more.
The parents of 17-year-old Eric Cantu, along with their attorney Ben Crump, speaking exclusively with ABC News in their first sit-down interview. They say they believe their Hispanic son was targeted when he was shot by a police officer while sitting in his car eating a burger.
You think it was racial profiling?
I think he had that in his mind frame. I think he already had a preset thought about who that person was and how he was going to take care of that problem.
The teen's family, sharing new photos overnight, says he's progressing, but still on life support.
He talks with his hands and he tries his best. It's hard for him.
I don't think I'll ever feel comfortable saying he's getting better until I see him walking out of there.
Earlier this month, police say Cantu was shot while eating with a friend in the parking lot of a McDonald's.
I got a vehicle over here that fled from me the other day.
San Antonio police officer James Brennan since fired from the force, approaching the car, then opening the door.
Get out of the car. What?
Police body camera footage shows Cantu attempting to drive away while Officer Brennan continues to shoot. Cantu's father saying his son was not trying to hurt anyone, but instead trying to get away from the situation.
What do you see in your son's face in that video?
I know my son's faces. He was scared. He was surprised. And he reacted.
Cantu shot at least 4 times, handcuffed, bleeding on the ground. 27-year-old Brennan on the force for just 7 months, charged with 2 counts of aggravated assault by a public official, and is currently out on bond.
This man's out walking around. Guess where my son's at? Laying with a tracheotomy in his throat.
We'd like to see the charges raised to attempted murder for 2 accounts, and other charges made to any officers that were involved in the brutality during the arrest as well.
San Antonio Police telling ABC News it submitted its case to the Bexar County District Attorney's Office. Cantu's family now considering their legal options and focusing on their son's recovery.
We want justice, yes, but we want Eric to live. We want Eric to live to tell his story.
This morning, young Eric remains in critical condition. The local district attorney here, Joe Gonzalez, tells me he plans to send this case to a grand jury. If convicted, Officer Brennan could spend the rest of his life in prison with no parole. Diane?
All right, John Quinones from San Antonio, thank you. We'll be right back. We have breaking news. President Biden is set to announce new actions he says will help families deal with inflation. Let's listen.
Collectively, billions of dollars in unfair fees. And I'm here with the Director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, Mr. Chopra, as well as the Chair of the Federal Trade Commission, Lena Khan. And we're remembering, they're members of the Competition Council that I created last year to promote competition across the economy and lower costs for families. One of the key things I've asked the council to take on was the unfair hidden fees known as junk fees that are taking real money out of your pockets, real money out of the pockets of American families. Things like, has been mentioned, surprise banking overdraft fees, excessive credit card late fees, hidden hotel booking fees, or those huge termination charges to stop you from switching cable and internet plans to a better deal. Surprise charges that companies sneak into bills because they can. In fact, there's an entire industry that's popping up in America to help companies use complicated algorithms to hide fees that hurt consumers and help them. These things add up. Remember, we talked in the beginning of the administration about the study done, I think it was at Penn, that if an average family got a $400 in charges or bills in a month that they couldn't pay, they'd have to sell something or have to borrow the money. Well, this adds up to more than $400 for a lot of families. The way I think about it is the way, you heard me say it before, my dad used to talk about it, and so many other people talk about it around their kitchen tables. How much your monthly bills, how much do you have to pay for necessities? And is there enough left over just to have a little breathing room? We're making progress in bringing down the cost of families. And by the way, the price of gasoline continues to fall. It's down for the third week in a row. They're down $1.25 a gallon from the beginning of the summer, and gas prices in the decade before the pandemic were averaging $3.30 before the pandemic, before I got here. During the pandemic, no one was driving, so the gas prices went down. But even with historic recovery we're seeing in the economy of 10 million new jobs and unemployment of 3.5%, gas prices are continuing to go down. And because they're going down, we're making serious progress in getting prices close to what they were before the pandemic. The most common price right now in America is $3.39 a gallon. It's going to come down more. And they're going to come down even further when the oil companies agree to our demand, my demand, to pass on the savings from the price of a barrel of oil, which is considerably down, to the pump, where in fact you get charged by the gallon. Each year, these junk fees, in addition, that companies charge cost America tens of billions of dollars, weighing down family budgets and making it harder for people to pay their bills. So my administration is taking action to eliminate these fees. First, imagine this. Your child outgrows his bicycle, and you decide to sell it online. And someone pays you a check, pays you $30 for the bicycle or something. Days later, that check that you got paid with, that you deposited in your bank, it bounces. You didn't know it was bad, but you get charged $15. You get charged $15. It's wrong. It's ridiculous. It's unfair. My administration is making clear today it's illegal as well. Second, my administration is also making clear surprise overdraft fees are illegal. Listen to how those fees work. And some of you all know this, because you know from your everyday lives. But you pay a bill and you double check your bank account to make sure before you write the check that you have enough in your account to cover it. You've gotten the money, so you go ahead and you pay. Then it turns out your balance wasn't up to date because your bank was slow in processing other charges. And by the time the bank gets around to settling the transaction, you've overdrawn your account. You're charged an overdraft fee that runs around $35 each time. It's not your fault. The bank screwed up. You didn't, the bank did. You had a positive balance when you paid the bill. It's just simply wrong. And today, my administration is making clear it's also illegal. Today's actions are going to save consumers more than $1 billion each year. And that's a lot of money back in people's pockets. As Director Chopra shared this morning, that his team is even going further, developing rules and guidance that would take credit card late fees and other banking fees that cost America's $24 billion a year, take them on. And we're just getting started. There are tens of billions of dollars in other junk fees across the economy, and I've directed my administration to reduce or eliminate them. Last week, the Federal Trade Commission started work on a rule to crack down on unfair and deceptive fees across all industries. Fees that were never disclosed, and there was no way to avoid the fee, like processing fees for concert tickets or like resort fees. When you think you're paying one price to book a hotel, and you only find out after you're checking out that there's a resort fee you've never heard about that's added to your bill. And the Department of Transportation is going after unfair airline fees. Last summer, if your flight was canceled or delayed, only one top airline guaranteed that you could rebook for free, even because they're the ones that canceled, not you. You didn't fill a show up. They canceled. When Secretary Buttigieg called them out on this, about 10 airlines, now 10 airlines rebook for free. They don't charge the fee. That's progress. The Department of Transportation is working on rules that would require airlines and travel sites to disclose fees up front. Fees like things, if you want to sit next to your young child, well, guess what? Or check your baggage, or change your ticket. You're going to be surprised. They're going to charge you for that without telling you. Your ticket's going to cost a heck of a lot more. And that's not a Federal Communications Commission. They're working on a rule that would make the same thing for fees that internet companies charge, requiring them to show those costs up front. I'm not saying they can't charge it, but you got to let you know they're going to charge it. You can make a decision. Some airlines, if you want 6 more inches between you and the seat in front, you pay more money. But you don't know it until you purchase your ticket. Look, folks, these are junk fees. They're unfair, and they hit marginalized Americans the hardest, especially low-income folks and people of color. They benefit big corporations, not consumers, not working families. And that changes now. You know, we've been working this for a while. I know it's been a tough few years, but from day one, my administration has been laser focused on easing the burden facing working class families and giving them, as my dad would say again, just a little breathing room. Because of the steps we've taken, the United States is in a stronger position today than any other country in the world economically. Jobs are up. People are back to work. American manufacturers are roaring back. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be heading up to Syracuse, New York, that area, where our U.S. company, Micron, is going to be investing $100 billion. I think I go day after tomorrow or the day after tomorrow. Manufacturing computer chips will put tens of thousands of Americans to work.
All right, I want to bring in White House correspondent Mary Ellis Parks live now for more on the president's plan there that he just described, aimed at trying to help families get a little bit of breathing room, in the president's words, as they fight inflation. Mary Ellis, how much will these measures really have an impact? Things like getting rid of so-called junk fees, as the president calls them.
Yeah, Dan, I think it's hard to know at this point, hard to know when this will actually go into effect, if they can enforce things like this, and to what extent. I mean, he did have quite a list there of what he called junk fees, resort fees that people aren't aware of when they book hotels, unfair airline fees, unfair overdraft fees, hidden credit card fees. But again, not a lot of details on when exactly these measures will be put in place, if the administration will be able to enforce this. You know, in theory, this could have an impact. Every little bit counts. We're hearing that so much from voters on the ground. Clearly, when it comes to political messaging, the White House is trying to say that they are looking for any ways to help. They understand that Americans are feeling the squeeze right now with inflation, with high gas prices, with high food prices, and they're trying to find ways, as they said, to make sure that they can do what they can to not benefit big corporations, but benefit working families.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.